My sister framed me for a crime I didn't commit, and my parents kicked me out. 6 years later, they're demanding an invite to my wedding. When they threatened to crash it, I gave them a final answer they never saw coming. I'm a 26-year-old male. Growing up, I thought my family was pretty ordinary. My father worked at a local manufacturing plant, my mother ran a small catering service, and I spent most weekends either playing video games or helping around the house. My younger sister, just a year behind me, and I were once inseparable. But 6 years ago, everything changed when she pinned her own crime on me. It started with some thefts happening at a friend's house party. Electronics went missing, phones, a tablet, and a couple of pricey gadgets. The next morning, my sister confronted me in front of our father and mother, screaming that she saw me sneaking out of a room with some of these items. I tried to defend myself, insisting I had nothing to do with it, but my sister teared up dramatically, telling them she caught me red-handed. My parents believed her. After all, she was the baby girl, the one who supposedly never lied. I, on the other hand, found myself painted as a common thief. It didn't matter that I had an alibi from a couple of friends. When the family confronted me, my father barked, "Are you calling your sister a liar?" My mother looked at me with utter disappointment. It was surreal. They demanded that I return the stolen items, which of course I didn't have, so I ended up with no way to prove my innocence. The argument spiraled out of control. My sister kept doubling down, giving elaborate details about how she saw me rummaging through coats and purses. By the end of the night, I was essentially disowned unless I confessed. I refused to lie and admit to a crime I didn't commit. Furious, my parents kicked me out. I remember my father pointing toward the door, his face red with anger. "Pack your things and go. If you can't own up, you're no son of mine." My sister stood by, arms folded, watching the scene unfold without a hint of remorse. Over the next few months, I couch surfed at different friends' places. The story spread through town, with half the people whispering about me being a thief. My father and mother told relatives they had no choice but to cut me off for the sake of family integrity. Meanwhile, the real culprit, my sister, walked away scot-free, basking in the sympathy of neighbors who pitied her for having a criminal brother. She never once confessed or tried to set the record straight. Eventually, I saved enough money working odd jobs to rent a tiny studio apartment a few towns over. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my space, free from accusations and drama. Slowly, I rebuilt my life. I got a stable job and made new friends who didn't look at me like I was a criminal. I didn't hear much from my parents. Now and then I'd get a text from an aunt or uncle urging me to apologize and come home, but I refused. I wasn't going to grovel for something I never did. That was 6 years ago. Since then, I've managed to carve out a decent life. I've found someone I love and moved forward. But it turns out that ghost from the past wasn't quite done haunting me because, as I recently discovered, my parents are furious they weren't invited to my wedding. The same parents who disowned me over my sister's lies now believe they deserve a front row seat on my happiest day. A few months ago, I announced my engagement to my fiancée, a warm and funny woman I'd met through a mutual friend. We decided to keep our wedding list small, close friends, some supportive extended relatives, and people who'd stood by us. My parents and sister never crossed my mind as potential invitees. After all, I'd spent the last 6 years with zero support from them. Why would I invite the same people who cast me out? Word got around through social media when we posted our engagement photos. That's when I received a flurry of messages from relatives, some of whom I hadn't heard from since the accusations. A cousin wrote to me, "Your father says he's disappointed you haven't invited him. He wants to reconcile." Another message from an uncle said, "You should at least let them come. They're family." I felt my jaw tighten as I read these messages.